The human strike force returned to Earth like ghosts. 31 battered ships emerged from FTL near Earth's orbit, their hulls scarred and burned. People watching from the planet below saw the vessels limping home and knew the price of victory. The celebration they had planned became a mourning service. Admiral Hyejin waited at the orbital dock as Captain Taehyun's flagship, the Vindication, slowly approached. Through the viewport, she could see the damage. Entire sections of the ship were gone, replaced by temporary patches. Scorch marks covered its surface. It looked like something that should not still be flying. When Taehyun finally stepped off his ship, Hyejin barely recognized him. He had aged 10 years in the week he had been gone. His uniform was torn and dirty. His eyes held the hollow look of someone who had seen too much death. "Report, Captain," Hyejin said formally, though her voice was gentle. "Mission accomplished, Admiral," Taehyun replied. "The Valkyrie forward base is destroyed. We estimate over 700 enemy ships eliminated, and their shipyard capacity reduced to 0. He paused. "We lost 19 ships. 3,214 crew members dead or missing." Hyejin nodded slowly. The numbers hurt, but they had known the cost before sending the mission. "You did well, Captain. All of you. Earth owes you a debt that can never be repaid." In the days following the strike, Intelligence Officer Yuna worked constantly. She monitored Valkyrie communications, looking for any sign of their next move. What she found surprised everyone. "Admiral, you need to hear this," Yuna said, playing a recorded alien transmission. The translation software turned it into Korean. It was 2 Valkyrie fleet commanders arguing. "We cannot continue this war. The humans are too dangerous. We've lost over 2,000 ships. The Dominion does not surrender. We must press the attack. With what ships? Our forward base is gone. Our reinforcements are scattered. And the humans keep winning." Yuna stopped the recording. "Admiral, they're afraid. Their military commanders are arguing about whether to continue the invasion. Some want to negotiate. Others want to withdraw completely." Admiral Hyejin felt a spark of hope for the first time in weeks. "Fear. We made them afraid." Commander Dong-hyun, who had survived the Proxima Centauri mission, entered the room. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the Valkyrie Dominion. They're requesting negotiations." The word hung in the air. Negotiations. The Valkyrie Dominion, which had conquered 47 species and enslaved billions, wanted to negotiate with humanity. It seemed impossible. "Put it through," Hyejin ordered. The main screen showed a different Valkyrie than before. This one wore elaborate robes and had intricate markings on its gray skin. When it spoke, the translation came through clearly. "Humans of Earth, I am Council Leader Vex of the Valkyrie Dominion. We wish to discuss terms for ending this conflict." Hyejin stood straight, her expression cold. "You came to our system demanding surrender. You attacked our ships. You tried to conquer our world. Now you want to negotiate?" The alien's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. "We underestimated your species. The Dominion is prepared to offer favorable terms. You will maintain your independence in exchange for—" "No," Hyejin interrupted. "You don't understand. You don't offer us terms. We offer you terms." The Valkyrie leader looked shocked. "That is not how— This is how it works now," Hyejin continued. "The Valkyrie Dominion will withdraw all ships from the Sol system immediately. You will recognize human territorial sovereignty over a sphere of space extending 50 light-years from Earth. Any Valkyrie vessel that enters this space without explicit authorization will be destroyed without warning. These are our terms. Accept them, or we continue the war." Commander Minji, watching from the fighter bay, smiled grimly. Around her, pilots cheered. They had bled for this moment. They had lost friends and comrades. Now they were hearing their admiral dictate terms to an empire that had expected to conquer them easily. The Valkyrie leader hesitated. In his culture, the conquered negotiated with the conquerors, but his species had never faced an enemy like humanity. Every battle had cost the Dominion terribly. "And there were other concerns. We accept your terms," the alien finally said. "But know this, humans. Other species under our rule are watching. Your victory has given them hope. They may rebel. You have destabilized an empire that maintained order for over 1,000 years. Then maybe your empire deserved to be destabilized," Hyejin replied coldly. "We'll see ourselves out of this conversation now. You have 48 hours to withdraw from our space. After that, any Valkyrie ship we find here will be scrap metal. She cut the transmission. The command center was silent for a moment. Then someone started clapping. Others joined in. Soon everyone was celebrating, though the joy was mixed with exhaustion and grief for those who had not survived to see this moment. In the following weeks, the Valkyrie fleet withdrew from human space. Long-range sensors watched as over 1,500 alien ships departed, heading back toward their empire. They moved quickly as if afraid the humans might change their minds and attack again. Captain Taehyun was promoted to admiral and given command of humanity's new expeditionary fleet. This force would patrol human territory and ensure no alien empire ever threatened Earth again. His first order was to establish military outposts in the systems surrounding Earth, creating a defensive network. Commander Minji took charge of training new fighter pilots. She created an academy that taught not just flying skills but also the aggressive tactics that had won the war. "We won because we were willing to do things the enemy thought were crazy," she told her students. "Never forget that advantage." Engineering Officer Seung-ho recovered from his injuries, became head of weapons development. He led teams working on new technologies based on what they had learned from the war. Improved FTL drives, better weapons, stronger shields. Humanity would never be caught unprepared again. Lieutenant Nari, despite her youth, was promoted to commander and put in charge of Terran's Strategic Command Academy. She trained new officers in coordinating complex fleet operations. Many of her students would go on to command ships in the expeditionary fleet. Intelligence Officer Yuna continued monitoring galactic communications. What she heard was fascinating. The Valkyrie Dominion was indeed facing rebellions. 3 conquered species had risen up, inspired by humanity's victory. The Dominion was too busy fighting on multiple fronts to think about attacking Earth again. Admiral Hyejin stood on the observation deck of a new flagship called the Unconquerable. Through the viewport she could see Earth, peaceful and blue. The planet had survived. Humanity had survived, and now they had a place among the stars, taken not through conquest but through defense of their home. Commander Dong-hyun joined her at the viewport. "It's beautiful, isn't it? Everything we fought for." "Yes," Hyejin agreed. "But we can't forget what it cost. Thousands died to defend our world. Captain Ji-won and her crew, all the pilots and marines and engineers who never came home. We owe it to them to make sure their sacrifice meant something." "It did," Dong-hyun said quietly. "We're still here. Earth is still free, and every species in the galaxy now knows that humanity cannot be conquered easily." Far across the galaxy, in the archives of the Valkyrie Dominion, a new entry was added to humanity's file. It was written by the fleet commander who had led the initial invasion, before he was demoted and sent to guard a remote outpost as punishment for his failure. The entry was simple but profound. Species classification: apex predator. Recommend avoidance. These beings have spent their entire history waging war against themselves. They have perfected destruction. They know 10,000 ways to kill. When threatened, they do not surrender. They do not negotiate. They fight with absolute fury until either they win or they die. Any species that attacks humanity should expect to pay a price in blood that may exceed the value of conquest. Approach with extreme caution. Conflict with humanity is not recommended. Other species in the galaxy read this entry and wondered about the small blue planet that had defeated a mighty empire. Some came to Earth seeking trade. Others came seeking alliance. A few came seeking to test humanity in battle. But those learned the same lesson the Valkyrie had learned. Admiral Hyejin, now older and with white hair, stood before the memorial wall at Earth's orbital station. On the wall were names. Thousands of names. Every person who had died defending humanity from the Valkyrie invasion. She visited this wall often, reading the names and remembering faces. They gave everything, she said softly to herself. And because they did, we're still here. Behind her, young officers hurried past, heading to their ships. A new generation, born after the war, preparing to defend humanity's place in the stars. They wore uniforms and carried weapons. They trained hard and learned the lessons their predecessors had paid for in blood. The war with the Valkyrie was over, but humanity's story among the stars was just beginning, and every species that met humans now understood one simple truth. They were not prey. They were predators, and predators did not yield. The galaxy would never forget the day humanity unleashed its fury, the day the Terran warships proved that some species could not be conquered, no matter the odds. Commander Taeyang Park stood on the bridge of the warship Defiance, staring at the stars outside. He had spent 20 years protecting humanity's colonies in space. Tonight felt different. Something in his gut told him trouble was coming. "Sir, we're picking up strange signals," said the young officer at the scanner station. Her hands moved quickly over the controls. Multiple quantum tunnels opening across all 12 systems. Taeyang's blood went cold. Quantum tunnels were how ships traveled faster than light. Someone was arriving. Many someones. Sound the alarm. Get all ships ready for... The first explosion cut him off. On the view screen, he watched as a distant defense station erupted in flames. Then another. And another. Within seconds, the peaceful night sky turned into a battlefield. "What's happening?" Someone shouted. "It's the Vorhen Collective," Taeyang said quietly. The Vorhen were 7 alien races that ruled most of the galaxy. Humanity had traded with them for decades, thinking they were friends. They're attacking everyone at once. Ships appeared from nowhere. Hundreds of them. They were sleek and deadly, with weapons that made human technology look like toys. Green energy beams cut through space, hitting human ships and colonies without mercy. Taeyang grabbed the communication panel. "All stations, this is Commander Park. We are under attack. Repeat, we are under attack. This is not a drill. Defend yourselves and protect the civilians." But even as he gave orders, he knew the truth. This wasn't a war. Wars had reasons. Battles had goals. This was something else. This was extermination. On Mars, Governor Narration was having dinner with her family when the sky turned red. She ran to the window of her apartment in New Seoul, the largest city on the red planet. Above her, orbital defense platforms were exploding one by one. Debris rained down like deadly snow. Her communication device buzzed urgently. "Governor, we need you at the command center immediately. The aliens are bombing civilian areas." Nari kissed her daughter's forehead. "Stay in the shelter. I'll come back, I promise." She didn't know if she could keep that promise. The command center was chaos. Screens showed destruction happening across Mars. Buildings crumbling. Ships burning. People running and screaming. The Vorhen weren't just attacking military targets. They were hitting everything. Why? Someone cried. Why are they doing this? Nari had no answer. Humanity had never threatened the Vorhen. Earth's colonies were small compared to alien empires. Humans were traders, explorers, builders. They posed no danger, or so they thought. Far from the fighting, Dr. Hana Choi worked late in her laboratory on Research Station Prometheus. She studied alien biology, trying to understand the different species in the galaxy. Tonight she was alone except for her assistant robot. "Hana, I'm detecting unusual quantum readings," the robot said. She looked up from her microscope. "What kind of readings?" "Multiple ships entering the system. Energy signatures match Vorhen military vessels." Hana frowned. The Vorhen military never came this far out. This was neutral research space. She accessed the station's long-range scanners and felt her heart stop. 20 Vorhen warships were heading straight toward Prometheus. Behind them, she could see what remained of the nearby human colony. It was burning. "Oh no," she whispered. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. She had studied Vorhen technology for years. She knew things about their ships that even the military didn't know. If she was going to die, she would make sure someone could use that information. Hana created an encrypted data package. Everything she knew about Vorhen shield frequencies, weapon systems, and communication protocols. She added her research notes, her theories, everything. Then she aimed it toward Earth and hit send. "Message away," the robot confirmed. "Good," Hana said. She watched the warships getting closer. At least something will survive. The first missile hit Prometheus 12 seconds later. Captain Minho Bayek was celebrating his 29th birthday in the pilot's lounge when the attack began. He had been joking with his squadron about getting old when the base alarm started screaming. "All pilots to your fighters. This is not a drill. Hostile forces in the system. Launch immediately." Minho ran faster than he had ever run before. His fighter was small and fast, built for quick strikes. He jumped into the cockpit and fired up the engines without waiting for clearance. Around him, other fighters were launching too. But there weren't enough. There were never enough. "Dragon Squadron, form up on me," Minho called over the radio. His hands gripped the controls tightly. "We need to buy time for the transports to escape." "There are too many of them," someone said. Fear filled the voice. "Then we make every shot count," Minho replied. He pushed his fighter forward into a sky filled with death. The Vorhen ships were massive compared to his little fighter, but size wasn't everything. He was fast. He was angry. And he wasn't ready to die. Minho fired his missiles at the closest enemy ship. They exploded against its shields, barely leaving a mark. The alien vessel turned toward him, its weapon ports glowing with green light. "Come on then," Minho whispered. He dove and twisted, avoiding the energy beams by centimeters. Behind him, another human fighter wasn't so lucky. It exploded in a ball of fire. The battle lasted 3 hours. It felt like 3 years. When it was over, half of humanity's colonies were gone. 4 billion people had died. The survivors were scattered, confused, and terrified. Commander Taeyang stood in what remained of his bridge. The Defiance had survived, but barely. Around him, his crew worked to repair damaged systems and count the dead. A message came through from Earth Command. The voice was tired and broken. "All surviving units, this is Admiral Day. We are initiating Protocol Exodus. Fall back to the coordinates being sent to you now. We must preserve what remains of humanity. We must survive. We must remember. Command out." Taeyang looked at his officers, young faces that had aged decades in a single night. "You heard the Admiral. Set course for the Exodus coordinates. And someone tell me why they did this." A junior officer spoke up. "Sir, we intercepted some Vorhan communications." They called it the Silence Directive. They said humanity was growing too fast, adapting too quickly. They said we were dangerous. Dangerous? Taeyang laughed bitterly. "We're scientists and farmers and traders. What's dangerous about that? They studied our history, sir. Our wars, our weapons, our ability to survive anything." The officer paused. "They said if they didn't stop us now, we would become unstoppable in 100 years. Taeyang stared out at the stars, at the burning colonies and drifting wreckage, at 4 billion graves floating in space. "They made one mistake," he said quietly. "What's that, sir?" "They didn't finish the job. Some of us survived, and now we're not the species they were afraid of." His voice grew hard as steel. "We're the species they made, and we're going to make them regret it." The Defiance turned and jumped into quantum space, carrying its crew toward an uncertain future. Behind them, humanity's golden age burned to ashes. But from ashes, phoenixes rise. The war had just begun. 3 months had passed since the attack. The Vorhan Collective believed they had won. 90% of human space belonged to them now. Their soldiers walked on human worlds, their ships patrolled human trade routes, and their flags flew over human cities. But something was wrong. Every day, Vorhan soldiers disappeared. Supply ships never reached their destinations. Communication stations went silent. The humans weren't defeated. They were hiding, learning, and preparing to strike back. Commander Taeyang stood in a secret base carved inside an asteroid. Around him were the survivors. Military officers, civilian engineers, scientists who had escaped the purge, and ordinary people who refused to give up. They numbered only 2 billion now, scattered across hundreds of hidden locations. "We can't win a direct fight," Taeyang told the gathered leaders. "We don't have enough ships or weapons. But we can make them bleed. We can make them afraid." "How?" asked Governor Nari, who had barely escaped Mars. "They have thousands of ships. We have dozens," Taeyang smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. "We become ghosts. We hit them where they don't expect it. We take their technology and use it against them. We make them pay for every day they stay in our space." A young woman stepped forward. Lieutenant Yuna Kang had been an intelligence officer before the war. Now she was one of humanity's most valuable assets. She had spent the past 3 months studying every piece of Vorhan communication they could intercept. "I found something," Yuna said. She pulled up a holographic display showing the 7 alien species that made up the Vorhan Collective. "These species have never actually fought together. They've never needed to. Their alliance is political, not military." "What does that mean?" someone asked. "It means they don't trust each other," Yuna explained. "Each species has different tactics, different priorities, different commanders. They're coordinated on paper, but in reality, they're 7 separate armies pretending to be one." Taeyang's eyes lit up. "So if we can make them doubt each other, we can break them apart," Yuna finished. The plan took shape over the following weeks. Human strike teams would hit Vorhan targets in ways that made it look like different alien species were responsible. They would hack communication systems to send false orders. They would make the 7 species of the collective suspicious of one another. But first, they needed weapons. And for that, they needed engineer Jiho Lim. Jiho was 33 years old and completely insane, at least according to everyone who knew him. He looked at alien technology the way an artist looked at paint. Before the war, military commanders had called his designs reckless and dangerous. Now those same commanders begged him to build more. "This is a Vorhan fighter," Jiho said, standing beside a captured enemy ship. "It's faster and stronger than anything we have, but it's also predictable. The Vorhan are smart, but they follow rules. They calculate everything. They don't improvise." He grinned and patted the alien ship like it was a pet. "We're going to make it improvise." Over the next month, Jiho and his team tore the Vorhan ship apart and rebuilt it. They removed safety systems that the aliens thought were essential. They overcharged the engines until they glowed red hot. They stripped away armor to make room for more weapons. The resulting craft was fast, deadly, and had a 50% chance of exploding if you pushed it too hard. "It's perfect," Captain Minho said when he saw it. Minho had survived the first battle and dozens more since then. He had lost friends, lost wingmen, lost people whose names he whispered in his sleep. But he kept flying. Someone had to. "You're certifiably crazy," Yuna told him. "Takes one to know one," Minho replied with a tired grin. "Besides, what's the worst that can happen? I die? I was supposed to die 3 months ago. Everything since then is borrowed time." The first raid happened on a Tuesday. 3 modified fighters appeared out of quantum space near a Vorhan supply convoy. The aliens barely had time to react before missiles tore through their shields. Then the human fighters vanished, jumping away before reinforcements could arrive. The second raid happened 2 days later, then a third, then a dozen more. The Vorhan started calling them the Ghosts. Ships that appeared from nowhere struck hard and disappeared before you could shoot back. The aliens increased their patrols, strengthened their defenses, but it didn't matter. The Ghosts always found a way. On Europa, one of Jupiter's moons, Governor Boranam led a different kind of resistance. She was 41 years old and had been a mining administrator before the war. Now she ran an underground network that the Vorhan didn't even know existed. Deep beneath Europa's ice, in tunnels that had once been used for water extraction, thousands of humans lived and worked. They built weapons in secret factories. They stored food and medicine. They prepared for the day when humanity would take back their worlds. "The Vorhan think we're beaten," Bora told her people. "They think because they control the surface, they control everything. But they don't understand us. We're not surface dwellers anymore. We're survivors, and survivors know how to wait." One night, Vorhan troops came to raid the underground. Someone had betrayed the location. The aliens came in force, expecting to find frightened civilians. Instead, they found a trap. The tunnels were rigged with explosives. The doorways were kill zones. Every corridor was designed to channel the enemy into ambush points. The Vorhan soldiers were trained for space combat, not underground warfare. They fought in neat formations with standard tactics. The humans fought like devils. Miners used drilling equipment as weapons. Engineers turned maintenance robots into bombs. Ordinary people who had never held guns before learned fast and shot straight. When the battle was over, the Vorhan retreated. They left behind their dead and a new, healthy respect for human determination. Back at the asteroid base, Jiho unveiled his greatest creation yet. He called it the Reaper Protocol. The Vorhan use quantum-encrypted networks for their ships, he explained. They think it's impossible to hack, and normally they'd be right. But I'm not trying to hack it. I'm trying to infect it. He brought up the code on a screen. It looked like chaos to everyone except the other engineers who gasped when they saw it. "This is a virus?" Taeyang asked. "A very special virus," Jiho confirmed. "We planted on captured Vorhan ships, then let the aliens recapture those ships. The virus spreads through their network like a disease, and when we give the signal..." He snapped his fingers. "Every infected ship becomes ours to control, even if just for a few minutes." "How many ships can we infect?" Yuna asked. Jiho shrugged. "As many as we can capture and release. 10, 20, 100? The more we infect now, the more we control later." It was a long-term plan. A desperate plan. But humanity was running out of options and running out of time. The raids continued. Every week, more Vorhan ships disappeared. More supplies were stolen. More soldiers died in ambushes. The collective sent reinforcements, but it didn't help. Humanity had learned to fight in the shadows. Then came the big victory. Commander Taeyang personally led an assault on the orbital station above Mars. It was a crucial target. If they controlled that station, they could launch operations across the entire system. The battle was brutal. 20 human ships against 40 Vorhan vessels. Captain Minho led the fighter screen. dodging and weaving through enemy fire. His modified ship screamed as he pushed it past every safety limit. Behind him, other pilots did the same. "Dragon 7 is hit," someone shouted over the radio. "Dragon 4 is gone. Dragon 2, pull up, pull up." Minho watched his squadron die around him. But they bought time. Time for Taiyang's assault team to board the station. Time for human soldiers to fight room by room through Vorhen defenders. Time for engineers to hack the station's control systems. When the battle ended, the station belonged to humanity again. But half of Minho's squadron was dead. He sat in his fighter afterwards, staring at his shaking hands, and cried. Taeyang found him there an hour later. The commander sat down beside the young pilot's fighter and didn't say anything for a while. "We won," Minho finally said. His voice was empty. Yes, was it worth it? Taeyang looked out at the stars. At the wreckage floating nearby. At the red surface of Mars below. "I don't know. But if we hadn't tried, we'd have nothing. At least now we have hope." "Hope?" Minho repeated. He laughed bitterly. "Is that what we're calling it?" "It's what we have to call it," Taeyang said. "Because the alternative is giving up. And we can't do that. Not while people like you keep flying. Not while people like Governor Bora keep fighting. Not while 2 billion humans refuse to die." News of the victory spread through human space like wildfire. For the first time since the Purge, humanity had taken back something important. It wasn't much. One station, one small victory, but it proved something crucial. They could win. In his secret command post, Jiho smiled as he uploaded the Reaper protocol into the captured station's network. The virus began spreading to every Vorhen ship that docked there. Soon, he would have his army of infected vessels. Lieutenant Yuna intercepted Vorhen communications and noticed something interesting. The aliens were arguing among themselves. Different species blamed each other for losing the station. The cracks were beginning to show. And somewhere in deep space, an old man heard about the victory and decided it was time to come out of retirement. 6 months into the war, Admiral Dae Song walked into the command center wearing his old uniform. It still fit, though it felt heavier than he remembered. The room fell silent when the officers saw him. "I thought you retired," Commander Taeyang said. "I did," Dae replied. His voice was rough from age but steady as stone. "Then I watched the Vorhen burn my grandchildren's future. Retirement can wait." The Admiral studied the tactical displays showing human-controlled space. It wasn't much. A few stations, some asteroid bases, scattered ships. The Vorhen still controlled everything else. "What's our current strength?" he asked. 30 warships capable of fighting, Taeyang reported. 4,000 fighters. About 200,000 soldiers spread across our bases. We've got food and ammunition for maybe 6 more months. And the enemy? Best estimates? 300 warships in human space alone, thousands more in reserve. They outnumber us 50 to 1. Admiral Dae nodded slowly. "Then we can't fight them fairly. We need to do something they'll never expect." "What's that, sir?" The old man smiled. "We attack their home systems." The room exploded in shocked voices. Attack the Vorhen home systems? That was suicide. That was insane. That was impossible. "Quiet down," Dae ordered. His voice cut through the noise like a knife. "Think about it. The Vorhen came to our space because they thought we were weak. They expected us to collapse. Instead, we've been bleeding them for months. Their alliance is already showing cracks. What happens if we bring the war to their doorstep?" Lieutenant Yuna spoke up. "They'll panic. The 7 species have never been attacked in their own territory. They've always been the aggressors. If we strike at their home worlds, they'll have to pull forces back to defend," Taeyang finished. "It could ease the pressure on our resistance cells here." "It's still suicide," someone muttered. "Maybe," Admiral Dae agreed. "But we're dying slowly anyway. At least this way, we die making them hurt." While the military debated strategy, scientist Minji Wu was making a discovery that would change everything. She was 31 years old and had spent the past 6 months studying destroyed Vorhen ships. Every piece of wreckage taught her something new about alien technology. Today, she learned something incredible. "Look at this," she told her assistant, pointing at a holographic display of a Vorhen engine core. "Their faster-than-light drives all operate on the same quantum frequency. Every ship in their fleet is synchronized to the same network. So, that makes their coordination better, right? It also makes them vulnerable," Minji said excitedly. "If we could generate a strong enough pulse on that exact frequency, We could destabilize every Vorhen drive at once. Every ship in their fleet would lose power simultaneously. Her assistant stared at her. That's impossible. The amount of energy needed would be enormous, yes, and we'd need to get close to their central nexus station to deploy it, but it's theoretically possible. Minji pulled up her calculations. I call it the quantum disruptor. If it works, we could end the war in one strike. The news reached Admiral Day within hours. He studied Minji's plans carefully, asking questions that showed he understood more than anyone expected. What do you need? He finally asked. Access to a Vorhen nexus station, Minji said. Time to build the device. And honestly, a miracle. We're humanity, Day replied. Miracles are what we do. Far behind enemy lines, infiltrator Hyun Kwan received his orders through an encrypted channel. Hyun was 38 years old and had been living among the Vorhen for 2 years. They thought he was a member of a servant species. They didn't know he was human. It had required surgery to change his appearance. It required learning alien languages and customs. It required watching his fellow humans suffer and die while he pretended to serve their murderers. Every day was agony. But the intelligence he gathered was priceless. His new orders were simple. Gather information about the Nexus Station in the Arconis system. That was the heart of the Vorhen Collective, the command center for their entire fleet. If humanity was really planning to attack there, Hyun needed to give them every advantage possible. He began his work carefully, asking innocent questions, observing guard rotations, memorizing security protocols. The Vorhen were arrogant. They never suspected a lowly servant might be a spy. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Yuna launched her own operation. She had been studying Vorhen psychology for months, and now she had a plan to use it against them. We're going to broadcast propaganda directly into Vorhen space, she announced. Propaganda? Taeyang looked skeptical. How does that help us? Yuna pulled up footage from recent battles. Videos of human fighters dodging impossible odds. Civilians building weapons with their bare hands. Governor Bora's resistance killing Vorhen soldiers in the underground tunnels. Captain Minho's squadron taking down ships twice their size. We show them what we're made of, Yuna explained. We show them that humans will never stop fighting. Never surrender. Never give up. We make them afraid. The Vorhen aren't afraid of anything, someone argued. They're afraid of us, Yuna corrected. That's why they tried to wipe us out. We need to amplify that fear. Make them question whether continuing this war is worth the cost. With their alliance already weakening, this could push them over the edge. The propaganda broadcasts began that week. Human messages flooded Vorhen communication channels. Some were in alien languages. Some were just images. A mother holding her child in a bombed-out shelter. A soldier with half his squadron dead still firing his weapons. An engineer building a bomb from scrap metal. The message was clear. You can't break us. Vorhen commanders started reporting strange things. Soldiers hesitating during raids. Ships requesting transfers away from human space. Different alien species arguing about tactics and blame. The psychological warfare was working. Dr. Hana Choi, who had survived the destruction of her research station, now worked directly with the military. She brought them all the data she had sent to Earth before Prometheus was destroyed. That information had been crucial in understanding Vorhen technology. Now she proposed something new. We can use engineer Jiho's Reaper protocol on a massive scale, Hana explained. We've been infecting individual ships one at a time. But if we can coordinate all the infected vessels to activate simultaneously during a major battle, we can turn the enemy's own fleet against itself. How many ships have we infected so far? Admiral Day asked. Jiho answered that question. 73 confirmed. Maybe more that we don't know about. The virus spread slowly through their network and they haven't detected it yet. 73 ships, the Admiral repeated. During a critical battle, that could make the difference between victory and death. All the pieces were coming together. Minji worked day and night building the quantum disruptor. Yun sent detailed intelligence about the Arconis system. Yuna's propaganda continued to divide the Vorhen alliance. Jiho prepared to activate his infected ships at the crucial moment. And Admiral Day began assembling a strike force. Every human ship that could still fight was recalled. Every pilot who could fly reported for duty. Every soldier checked their weapons and said goodbye to loved ones. They all knew what this mission meant. Most of them wouldn't come back. Captain Minho volunteered immediately. He had lost too many friends to stay behind now. If we're going to hit them where it hurts, I want to be there. Governor Nari transferred command of her resistance cell to someone else. Mars needs defending, but Earth needs me to fight, she said. Her colony ship, armed with improvised weapons, would join the fleet. Governor Bora sent a message from Europa. We'll keep the pressure on here. Make them pay for what they did, and come back alive if you can. The night before the fleet departed, Taeyang found Admiral Day standing alone, looking at a list of names. The names of every human who had died since the purge began. 6 billion names. It took hours just to scroll through them all. Do you think we can actually do this? Taeyang asked quietly. No, Day admitted. By every logical calculation, we should fail. We're outnumbered, outgunned, and out of time. The Vorin should destroy us before we get close to Arconis. Then why are we going? The Admiral turned to face him. Because someone has to. Because if we don't try, we'll die slowly hiding in asteroids until they find us all. But mostly because the Vorhin made one fatal mistake. They thought we were dangerous when we were peaceful and growing. They haven't seen what we become when we're cornered and desperate. He gestured at the list of names. 6 billion people died so the rest of us could live. We owe them more than hiding. We owe them justice. We owe them proof that their sacrifice mattered. The next morning, 30 warships prepared to launch. 4,000 fighters checked their systems. 200,000 humans across the scattered bases watched and prayed. This was it. The moment that would decide humanity's future. Admiral Day stood on the bridge of his flagship and gave the order. All ships, jump on my mark. Target coordinates, Arcana system. Mission objective, deploy the quantum disruptor and end this war. He paused, thinking about everyone who had fought and died to reach this moment. Thinking about the homes burned and the lives lost. Thinking about his grandchildren who would never see peace unless he succeeded. For humanity, he said quietly. For humanity, the entire fleet echoed. The war ended not with a bang but with silence. 8,000 Vorhin ships floated dead in space across 70 systems. Their mighty fleet, the pride of 7 ancient species, was nothing but scrap metal now. The quantum disruptor had done its job perfectly. Too perfectly. The Vorhin collective didn't just lose their military. They lost their ability to coordinate. Their alliance, held together by technology and convenience, shattered like glass. Within a week, 3 alien species contacted humanity asking for peace. Their messages were similar. We surrender, please don't destroy us, we were following orders, it wasn't our idea. They begged for mercy. Admiral Day, still recovering from his injuries, read the messages with cold eyes. Around him, the surviving military leaders waited for his decision. Commander Taeyang, Governor Nari, Lieutenant Yuna, all of them worn down by months of fighting. What should we tell them? Someone asked. Day was quiet for a long time. He thought about the 6 billion humans who had died. He thought about scientist Minji and infiltrator Hyun, who had sacrificed themselves in the power core. He thought about all the names on that endless list. We tell them the price of peace, he finally said. Complete withdrawal from all human space, full reparations for damages, public acknowledgement of what they tried to do, and technology sharing to help us rebuild. They'll never agree to that, an officer protested. Then they'll face the same fate as their fleet, Day replied. His voice was as hard as steel. We didn't start this war. We didn't ask for 6 billion of our people to die, but we finished it. And they're going to remember that for the rest of their existence. The Vorhin agreed to everything. They had no choice. Without their fleet, they were defenseless. Without their alliance, they were divided. The species that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years learned a painful lesson. Sometimes the prey has teeth. Commander Taeyang led the liberation forces across human space. He went from world to world, freeing colonies that had been under occupation for 9 months. Each time he found the same thing: humans who had refused to break. On Europa, he found Governor Bora still running her underground resistance. She had fought Vorhin forces to a standstill for months, using nothing but determination and improvised weapons. When Taeyang arrived, she was planning her next raid. It's over, he told her. The Vorhin surrendered. Bora stared at him. Then she sat down heavily and started to cry. Not from sadness, from relief, from exhaustion, from the weight of 9 months of constant fighting, finally lifting from her shoulders. We won? She asked through her tears. We won. Across human space, similar scenes played out. Resistance cells emerged from hiding. Civilians who had been living under occupation walked free. Prisoners were released. Slowly, painfully, humanity began to count the cost of survival. 6 billion dead, 12 colonies destroyed or heavily damaged, hundreds of ships lost, thousands of soldiers who would never come home. The list went on and on, but 2 billion survived. 2 billion humans who refused to give up, who fought back against impossible odds, who proved that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't technology or numbers, it was the simple, stubborn refusal to die quietly. Lieutenant Una was assigned to document what remained of human civilization. She traveled from colony to colony with a recording team, preserving stories before they were lost. What she found amazed her. In every destroyed city, humans had left time capsules, instructions for rebuilding, locations of supply caches, technical knowledge carefully preserved. Even in the face of extinction, people had planned for the future. On Mars, she found a school that had been bombed. The children were all dead. But in the rubble, she found a wall where students had written messages before the attack. We were here. Remember us. Don't let them win. Una stood in that ruined classroom and cried. Then she recorded everything, making sure those voices would never be forgotten. Dr. Hana Choi received a data package 3 weeks after the Battle of Arconis. It had been delayed in transmission, sent from scientist Minji's personal terminal moments before she deployed the disruptor. Hana opened it with shaking hands and found years of research. Everything Minji had learned about Vorhan technology. Designs for faster engines, plans for better power systems, medical advances. It was a treasure trove of knowledge. At the end of the file was a personal message. Minji's face appeared on screen, recorded just before she boarded the assault ship. Hana, if you're seeing this, then the mission succeeded and I didn't make it back. I'm okay with that. Use this research. Build better ships. Cure diseases. Make humanity stronger. But please don't let what the Vorhan did define us. We're builders, not destroyers. Don't forget that. Make something beautiful from what I'm leaving you. The message ended. Hana sat alone in her laboratory and cried for her friend. Then she got to work. Minji had given humanity a gift. She wouldn't waste it. Captain Minho returned to find himself promoted to commander. They wanted him to train the next generation of pilots. He refused at first. He had lost too many people. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Dragon Squadron dying around him. But then young cadets started approaching him. Boys and girls barely old enough to fly who looked at him like he was a hero. They asked questions about combat tactics and ship handling. They wanted to learn from him. One girl, 16 years old, told him why she wanted to be a pilot. My parents died in the first attack. My brother died fighting on Mars. I'm all that's left of my family. I want to make sure nobody else loses everyone they love. Minho looked at her determined face and saw himself 6 months ago. Young. Eager. Not yet broken by war. All right, he said quietly. I'll teach you. But first lesson, flying is about keeping your squadron alive, not about being a hero. You understand? Yes, sir, he began teaching. It hurt every day remembering the pilots he couldn't save. But these kids deserved a chance. They deserved to learn from someone who had survived. So he taught them everything. How to dodge, how to shoot, how to make every second count. And slowly, day by day, he found a reason to keep going. Governor Nari became the first chancellor of the reformed human collective. The position was created to unite humanity's scattered colonies under one government again. She didn't want the job. She wanted to go home to Mars and rebuild, but people insisted. Her inauguration speech was broadcast across every human world. She stood before the cameras, looking older than her 48 years, and spoke from her heart. The Vorhan Collective sought to erase humanity because they feared what we might become. They studied our history and saw violence and war. They calculated our growth and saw a threat. They decided we were too dangerous to exist. She paused, letting the words sink in. They were right to fear us. Not because we're violent, not because we're warlike, but because we survive. We adapt, we refuse to quit. When they came to destroy us, they didn't find victims. They found fighters. Every civilian who picked up a weapon. Every engineer who built bombs from scrap. Every soldier who died buying time for others. Every person who refused to surrender. We lost 6 billion people. That wound will never fully heal. But those 6 billion didn't die for nothing. They died proving that humanity cannot be erased, cannot be broken, cannot be stopped. So let this be our message to the galaxy. We didn't ask for this war, but we finished it. We don't want to rule anyone.
We don't want to threaten anyone.
But we will never ever be victims again. We are survivors. We are builders. We are humanity. And we endure. The speech was heard by every species in known space. Some were impressed. Some were afraid. All of them learned to respect humanity in a way they never had before. 10 years passed. The colonies were rebuilt. New stations were constructed. Ships bearing human designs patrolled space that had once been Vorhen territory. The population was growing again, slowly climbing back toward what it had been. But humanity had changed. They built their ships faster and tougher now. Their weapons were based on reverse-engineered Vorhen technology, improved by human innovation. Every colony had defense systems that could fight off invasion. Every citizen learned basic combat skills in school. They were no longer the peaceful explorers they had been. The war had forged them into something new, something harder. But scientist Minji's message had been taken to heart. They built beautiful things too. Art galleries in new stations, parks in rebuilt cities, music and poetry celebrating survival. They remembered the dead but didn't let grief define them. Admiral Day, now truly retired, visited Earth's memorial one warm afternoon. It was a massive structure covering several city blocks. The names of 6 billion dead were carved into black stone walls. It took days to walk past them all. A young child approached him as he stood reading names. She couldn't have been more than 7 years old. "Are you Admiral Day?" she asked. "I am. My teacher said you saved humanity. Is that true?" Day smiled sadly and knelt down to her level. "No, child. I didn't save humanity. Humanity saved itself. Every person who fought, every person who survived, every person who refused to give up. They're the real heroes." "Then why is this place called the Forge?" the child asked, reading the memorial's inscription. "Because that's what the war was," Day explained. "The Vorhen tried to destroy us with fire and death. But fire doesn't just destroy. It also forges. It makes things stronger, harder, better.